The Santa Dash is coming back to town. Join Beatson Cancer Charity this year at the Santa Dash at Glasgow Green on the 8th of December, 2024. Run, jog, walk or hop on your sleigh. It's time to do your festive 5K. Registration for the Glasgow Santa Dash is now open.
Hi, I'm Laura Boyd and welcome to another episode of Beatson Talks. Now today we're discussing the complexities of returning to work after cancer treatment, a challenge that so many face after their diagnosis and recovery. I'm delighted to say that joining me today are Rebecca, a practitioner from the Specialist Health and Work Service, also known as SHAWS, and Lyndsay, who has personally worked with SHAWS while exploring her options for returning to the workplace. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. Now, like so many of these that we discuss, this is a big, big subject and something that you don't really initially think about in your diagnosis. You know, you've got so much else going on, but it's a big part of it as well. Rebecca, first of all, can you explain to us what SHAWS is?
So the Specialist Health and Work Service, we support anybody who is impacted by an experience of cancer or anyone who's caring for someone who has cancer. So we support anyone from point of diagnosis on a one-to-one basis with any complications with going back to work while they're off sick because of their experience of cancer. So we can help people with communication with their employer or just to know more about their rights or reasonable adjustments, or sometimes just a space to talk about how complicated it is and how it's quite difficult to understand what challenges you're going to face until you're in that position. We also work with employers to support them to have more compassionate conversations in the workplace, to give them a bit of training about how to best support someone who has cancer and helping them go back to the workplace or whatever that might be for them, whether it's withdrawn from work or whilst they're off sick. So yeah, I think that's just about everything. We also do some small workshops as well for people who are experiencing cancer online as well, just to give them that kind of peer-to-peer support as well.
Yeah, and it's great to have that because I know when I was first diagnosed, I think it was a Wednesday, I remember phoning my boss, hysterical, saying, I won't be in tomorrow, I've got cancer. He must have thought, what on earth is this? But I didn't know what else to do. And luckily, I worked for STV and I have to say they were amazing throughout and they gave me all the time I needed. There was still like things I had to learn about, about occupational health and staggered return and, how long were they going to keep paying me and all that kind of thing. As I say, they were completely supportive. But I know every workplace isn't necessarily set up to be like that. If it's a small company, they might not be able to. So there are a million questions that go with this. It's a huge, huge subject. What does the service overall provide and how would someone contact yourself if they're, if they're dealing with that diagnosis?
Yes. So people can contact us directly. So they can either email us. We've got our email inbox for the Health and Work Service, or they can just give us a call on the Beatson Cancer Charity number. Or your GP can refer you on to us. Any health practitioner you're working with can refer you on to us if that's helpful. Hopefully, again, your employer can also contact us if they need any support as well. What we offer is one-to-one support for clients with kind of whatever they need in terms of some people just need a little bit of information and then they're happy to go off on their own. Other people, we schedule more regular contact or we can attend meetings with them or write letters of support. It just is really tailored to the individual and what they need and what they're going through at that time.
It's so valuable, and somebody who knows that only too well is Lyndsay. Lyndsay, first of all, tell me a little bit about your backstory and how you came to need SHAWS.
So in 2021, I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which kind of really came out of the blue for me. It was really fast and needed some treatment and a stem cell transplant. So that was quite a long treatment and a long journey. Very complicated, lots of long-term side effects and a lot of isolation. So I was off work for quite a long time. I think it was about a year and a half before I started looking into what was I going to do next, and I attended a Where Now session at the Maggie's Centre, and they suggested speaking to the Shaw's team about what work might look for me. I wasn't even thinking that I was going back straight away, but I just needed someone to talk to initially. I was feeling really lost and wasn't sure if the job that I had was actually going to be suitable for me now with my kind of complicated health needs, and whether I was going to get back to that and whether I even wanted to do that now. My kind of priorities and things maybe changed. Maybe wasn't able to manage the stress and stuff like that.
It's another pressure, isn't it, that you sometimes just don't need.
It was just needed. Yeah, just needed someone to talk to and find out more information, because I hadn't really taken any time off work before. I didn't know about the legislation and the reasonable adjustments and what I could even ask from my employer. I didn't know any of that, so I was just really needing a bit of support with it.
And how helpful were Shaw's?
It was so helpful. I'm really, really thankful for the support that I got from Rebecca. We had lots of discussions about my thoughts and my worries about work, and also all the information that was provided on how I could speak to my employer about my health and about what they would be able to do to support me if I did decide to go back. So that was really, really helpful. And Rebecca also offered to come to meetings with me and support me and write emails to them so that they could help understand what support someone might need going back to work after having a cancer diagnosis. So it was really helpful just also for someone to listen and help you validate that it is really hard and it's not straightforward. It's so complicated. There's lots of like really difficult feelings and emotions that you maybe aren't going to go back and be able to go right back into how you were or how you used to work. So yeah, it was just really that listening and the support was. I was really grateful for it, and I still am. Now that I'm kind of looking into what am I going to do next. Yeah. So yeah, it was really helpful.
There's sometimes a weird mixed bag of emotions, I think, going back to work as well, because you want to feel normal. Yeah. And you don't want people to be kind of pussyfooting around you, you know, walking on eggshells. But at the same point, you do need a bit of support. And, you know, we've spoken about this many times in this podcast, but sometimes I am like, I've got cancer, make me a cup of tea, you know, like that. You have that joke. You know, there's a kind of balance, isn't there? And it's difficult for other people in the workplace as well to know how they handle people coming back, and for employers. So it's great then that Shaw's does work with companies to help them recognise that. So tell me a bit about that side of it.
Yeah, I think that part of it is quite difficult because it is that kind of, it's that kind of nuance of how to interact with someone in a way that's maybe different from a manager has ever had to interact with someone, because I think all the things that we kind of spoke about, it is so complicated. There's so many feelings and emotions attached to that. And I think like when people are going through like an absence process, to them that's a process, it's a policy. But to the person who's on the other end of that, that's like such a monumental part of them trying to make sense of the new part of their life they're at. And there's so much of that attached that I think it's really difficult for an employer to even begin to understand that. So I think what we do at Shaw's is try to guide them in just embracing the uncertainty of it, you know, giving that person as much space as possible, and also highlighting to them that policy and procedure isn't law. You know, that these are policies that are HR policies that are made up in a company. Cancer is out with that. It's not a short-term illness.
It's not one size fits all. There's so many different variations.
You know, it's not someone off because they've broke their leg and they know exactly when they're going to be back. It's too big for that. So it has to be taken on an individual basis. And I think what we say to employers is, don't just guess and try and get it right. You know, like listen to that person and say, what do you need from us? What can we do better to help you in your experience of cancer? So I think that's the kind of main thing we try to get across, is that it's so individual.
Yeah. And if somebody is faced with a cancer diagnosis, then what are the kind of initial support and resources that are available through Shaw's that they can contact you and kind of learn about?
So we always say that people have a right to privacy. So if you've just been diagnosed with cancer, you don't have to tell your employer that, if that's not something you want to speak about yet. A lot of the time it depends on the existing relationship that someone has with their employer, whether they feel comfortable doing that or not. You always have that right to not want to talk about it with your manager. You only have to really give over the information that's on your sick line, and that can be spoken to your GP about that. But there is many benefits to disclosing that and being able to actually say to your employer, "This is what I'm going through." So we always encourage people, if they feel comfortable doing so, to open up that dialogue from the beginning and be quite clear on what you actually need and say, look, this is what's happened. If someone's going off sick, agree the communication before you go off sick, so that when you're off sick, you're not getting lots of calls if that's not
the last
helpful,
thing you want, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think sometimes employers think they're offering support, but actually if someone's going through a really difficult time with their health, they've just got a diagnosis, it's not normally their employer they want to speak to about that. It's normally family and friends. So it can be quite invasive when somebody's just wanting to kind of make sure they're okay. But likewise, and then if they don't contact, someone can feel quite isolated by that. So we always say, at point of diagnosis, talk to your employer about what you need. If you are going to go off sick, agree that communication, agree what that's going to look like. Ask for the absence policy. Your manager should always be providing that at the beginning, so that you have all the information about, your sick pay, how long that's going to last, when that's going to run out, what happens when that runs out. And those are all things that Shaw's can kind of guide you on. At this point, these are the questions you need to ask. These are the things you need to make sure, so that you have peace of mind to concentrate on your health.
Yeah, because it's a major stress and it's something you don't need. I remember my employer saying, switch off your phone and let we'll kind of deal with it. We'll check in once a month or whatever it was, But I knew that was being taken care of, and that was such a weight off my mind.
Absolutely.
And I know of other people who haven't had that, and it's horrendous because it's major. The majority of us need to work. Lyndsay, tell me about your experience with work and how all this has kind of changed you.
So initially, my employer they didn't really understand so much about the diagnosis and what that meant for me long term. It was very complicated and they didn't really understand it. So it was helpful to have conversations with them about, what that might look like, and try and help them understand what I would be able to do if I came back to work and what they could offer me. So there was lots of conversations that I was having with Rebecca to try and help them understand and give them the information. You would hope that your employer would have information about reasonable adjustments and things, but they don't always. Sometimes you do have to help them understand. But we had lots of conversations with my employer, and lots of conversations that Rebecca and I had about how I was feeling about work and what support I was going to have when I went back there, and did I want to go back. I just felt really, really unsure and lost about whether what I did for my job was going to be suitable for me now. So I worked as a social worker, so going back to that a really stressful environment, I just wasn't sure whether I was going to do that as well as I would have wanted going back. So eventually I did decide to leave, withdraw from the role, because I felt differently. I wanted to do something different, and it was really, it took me it was a long process for me to get to that point of talking to my employer, talking to Rebecca, thinking about what I really wanted, what was my priority.
It's absolutely massive.
And it took a long time because I really wanted to go back, but also I wanted to prioritise my health, and I knew that was the most important thing, that I needed to stay well and I needed to focus on that. But it took me a while to get there.
But I think it's only natural. It takes you a while to get there. It's such a big transition that it's like you've got so many other things to weigh up, and I think it's easy to be critical.
You're suddenly faced with something that's quite terrifying, and it does make you think about the future. And if something is extremely stressful, or sometimes is actually a kind of almost a positive you can take from it, is that actually I'm going to change my life and I'm going to go down this route or whatever, so that you can do things like that. I think that's something that is quite important as well when you go back to work. If you do go back to work, is the support that you need beyond. It's not just you're back at work and that's it. There are so many hospital appointments, and I know, as being a woman in my 30s, there was a whole load of other, not just my cancer appointments. I suddenly had to think about fertility, and there's a massive knock-on effect. So there are many, many hospital appointments. Again, I've been very lucky in that I've been able to say, I'm going to hospital, no questions are asked. I don't have to show the letter and stuff. But that can be a big concern as well, can't it?
Yeah, massively. I think that even when people are still in work, they often have to, it's like they're asking for a favour to be going to these appointments. And people have like what me and Lyndsay are talking about, is like there's so many steps to even get to a decision about whether you go back to work. Then if someone does get back to work, then they have to then contend with almost having to feel like they're positioning themselves in a way that it's okay to ask for time off to go to a hospital appointment, which is something that's very unpleasant and not what people want to be doing. They want to be back at work. They want to not have to think about hospital appointments, but unfortunately that's the reality, that they have to go to that. And I think sometimes employers just kind of, you're back at work, your phase return's finished.
That's you.
That's you. You're back. You're back on the team like everyone else suddenly, and actually that's not the reality at all.
Yeah.
That's what I struggled with in thinking about going back, is that I thought for a little while it would probably be okay, and you would have the phased return and the support, but after a while it would be, when are you going to do the next part? When are you going to be doing that? And it was just really difficult. And when you feel like you've trained for something and you've been doing that for such a long time, it was a bit like, what do I do now if that's not the right thing for me now? It was a very difficult decision to decide to not do that anymore. It was really, really hard. You feel like you let people down. And it's not like that, but you feel like that
as well. And it should never be like that. You've had a life-changing experience. So it's a major part of it that I don't actually think is spoken about that much, and so thank goodness there are services like Shaw's. I think another aspect of it, which actually I had never considered until you kind of mentioned it, we were talking before about it must be so difficult if you're the parent of someone and your child is sick. But I guess for partners as well, or, elderly parents, or, anything like that. So you support, Shaw's support not just the cancer patients, they support relatives as well, don't they?
Yeah, so we support carers. So we often support people that are caring for a loved one who is experiencing cancer that have a work-related issue. So sometimes we have someone who's like a partner to someone who's off sick and they need to take time off to care for that person. And then other times maybe it can be like a relative as well. But quite often that's really difficult because, of course, indirectly that person is covered by the Equality Act. However, sometimes I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding of that because people are almost kind of like, well, it's not you that's got cancer.
Yeah.
But to have to even explain that to someone, how difficult an experience it is to have someone that you love that's close to you, that you're caring for, to go through that, is just really difficult.
But Shaw's are there to help. And Lyndsay, they did help you massively.
They really, really did. We had loads of conversations. Rebecca was always chatting to me, and it's just really, although I needed all the information about the legislation and the law and the reasonable adjustments, but actually just having the conversation, having somebody to talk to about it that maybe wasn't your employer or wasn't a family member, and you could talk about the challenges and have someone listen to how difficult it is and come back to you and validate that it is really complicated. It's okay to feel the way that you feel, because sometimes you're you don't know how to feel. You've never experienced something like that in your life.
And you don't want to dump it on a family member and worry them. Or not that you would be dumping it on them, but that's often how you feel. You don't want to kind of, they've got enough as well that they're going through, so you don't want to. So she was very good.
She was very good. She was very good. And although I've decided to withdraw from work, Rebecca still has been catching up with me about what I might want to do now and what support she can help me getting a new job, because that's also a concern. Who will employ me now when you have all these challenges with your health? So having those conversations as well about what I can say to new employers is also really helpful. That's something that I didn't really think about initially. How do you have these conversations with people that they don't know you? They don't know how you worked before.
And you don't want them to think,
I'm not going to be able to do that.
She's going to have to go to hospital. And it shouldn't
really
be that
hard.
kind of thing, but that will be in your mind.
It shouldn't be like that, but of course you're going to feel a wee bit as if like you have to justify that. And I think it's having those conversations to be prepared for how you want to talk about it, what you're comfortable sharing, what you feel like. Because I think when you're in a job that they knew how you worked before, you feel more comfortable asking for allowances because you're like, remember when I didn't have cancer, I didn't need this. Whereas with someone new, it's almost like
they're taking that on as well.
It's
Again,
really hard.
It shouldn't be that.
It shouldn't
that
be,
is the way it is. Do you think companies are getting better? Is there more of an understanding? I can tell by your face that's a no.
I would like to think that things are getting better. I think people generally are, people are more, I think, exposed to the reality of cancer now. I think it's moving away from being something that is like everyone's terrified of talking about. I think that's still very much there, but I think that's the main shift. We are working really hard to try and reach as many employers as we can to give that kind of advice and training. But I think that on the whole, I would like to think things are getting a bit better. People are being more compassionate and understanding, and that they know, because cancer touches so many different families.
You almost think that it should be, if you're setting up a company or you have a company, any company of any size, it should be something you're considering from the start, because everybody is going to have employees that are touched by it. So you should have a policy in place, but also a kind of general chat with managers as to how you deal it. You would think, or treat, some kind of training that should be rolled out across
absolutely.
the board.
And don't get me wrong, there's some brilliant companies out there, and there's some absolutely amazing managers that the support they have given their employees has been so good and been such a positive support in their experience of cancer. Unfortunately, I think most people that come to us for support are telling you when things kind of go wrong, but we also want people to encourage people to come to shows if things haven't went wrong, if they just need a bit of advice about how to talk about it or what to say, or even at the start,
That's a brilliant thing to know, because I didn't realise that was out there when I was first diagnosed. So it was, maybe would have saved me making that horrendous call to my boss. He never lets me forget that. But as I say, there are positive stories, because
absolutely
my company were amazing, and there are people like you out there who can help. Lyndsay, how is the future looking for you? Are you kind of thinking you're going to get back into employment, or
Absolutely. I'm doing really well now, and although my health still continues to be complicated, I'm doing great, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into work and getting my life back again, getting a bit of purpose. Been doing some volunteering just to get me back into getting out and getting my confidence back. Really enjoying that. It's more a lot. You lose your confidence when you're so isolated or not being able to do things. So I've been enjoying that. And looking forward to new opportunities to see what I might want to do next. And I suppose that's a positive thing, to do something new and something different, and hopefully something that will make me happy. So,
Well, I really hope that happens for you. Rebecca, we'll leave the final word for you. Someone is newly diagnosed, maybe listening to this, as you said, they can email or they can go to the Beatson. Have you got the email address there? Do you want to tell us how to get in touch?
So you can give us an email on healthandworkservice@beatsoncancercharity.org, or you can give us a call through Not sure what the number is.
We'll get the number in the notes. Don't worry, they'll be on the show notes.
And if you're in touch with any other services, for example, Maggie's or your GP or anyone like that, they'll be able to put in a referral for you as well if you ask.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it's been a joy to chat to you both. So informative, and it'll give a lot of comfort, I'm sure, to loads of people to know that they can reach out to yourself and to hear your story, Lyndsay. So hopefully you'll get your dream job. We'll do a podcast in a year and we'll hear all about it.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you for listening. As Rebecca said, you can contact beatsoncancercharity.org for more information. We will see you soon.